go. So Kimberly, tell me how your writing has been going this week.
Good.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
I can see you have different sections. Tell me about this.
So I wrote a few of the ideas I want to put in each of my paragraphs about it.
Okay.
And so I just have the ideas of that. They lost their food, they ran out of food, so they got really hungry.
Okay.
And then they ran into a few wild animals. And then I wrote about the pyramid and how it's haunted. And then I wrote about the other travelers they ran into. And then I wrote about the family and how they went on this big hike.
Okay, very nice. Do you mind if I read real quick, read some of this? Oh, I like this detail about the hyena. The hyena tried to threaten them because she had her baby with her. They ran into a lion which tried to hurt them. Oh, that's cool. Okay, I was wondering if you were going to talk about the family. Is it just going to stay the family in the story? Or are you going to tell us about the people in the family? And that's a decision you as the writer are going to make. But you say the family has 7 people total, the mom and dad. And then you've given the children names. I love this. Summer, Jim, Carson, Maya, and Lily. Wonderful. So, with these different parts of your story, what would you like to, where do you want to go from here? Do you want to, there's a couple things we can do. We can start organizing it and figuring out which part goes where and making transitions between the parts. Or we can pick one part and start adding more detail and rich language and kind of work on word choice. So what would you like to do today?
I think I just kind of want to sort it out.
Okay.
And figure out where everything's going to go.
Kind of start organizing it. Okay, wonderful. As I read through the different parts and based on what you did last week with, this map that you drew out, what parts do you feel like, you want to be the beginning and then putting in the middle and then tying it up at the end? And I don't know if you have a tie up at the end paragraph from what I'm reading. I don't know if you have that quite yet.
Not really.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's totally fine, but I don't want to make you feel like you should have that yet. And so, but as you look at these different parts, this one is, they got very hungry. So that's definitely not the beginning, right? To me, this one sounds like the beginning. So a family goes on a big hike in the Sahara Desert. They got lost in the desert and have no food or water. The family has 7 people total, the mom and dad, Summer, Jim, Carson, Maya, and Lily. So that sounds like the first part. What you can do, there's a couple of ways to pull this together. You can just make put a 1 here for the first part, and put a 2, put a 3. You can cut them apart and then, take a new paper and tape them in the order you want them. So if this is the first part, what would be next?
I was thinking this one and this one.
Okay. So here you tell us they don't have any food or water. I think it would be really cool to have them run into the wild animals
Mm-hmm.
and deal with the wild animals, and then come around to, then they are very hungry. But it's up to you. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think this one first.
Because you were saying this one or this one. So if you're going to go here and then here. Now, do you want to kind of cut and paste? Or do you want to just make notes that number 1, number 2?
Probably just make notes.
Okay, why don't you write a number 1 right there? Okay, and then a number 2 here. And then you're, let's see. Yeah, 3, because they can't run into the travelers who give them food and then become very hungry, right? So 3, now you've got the travelers and the pyramid. Are the travelers the ones that talk to them about the pyramid?
And they tell them about the
Okay.
map.
Okay, so that would be your number 4. And then the pyramid, number 5. Okay, wonderful. So now, moving forward, you're going to go and again, you can still cut and paste these if you don't want to rewrite. But we can bring in kind of the revising part of writing while you put these together. Do you know what I mean when I say revising? Kind of not. So revising is where you look at what you've written and then you ask, okay, is this interesting to my reader? You start to consider from a reader's perspective, is this interesting to my reader? How can I give them more information or more details? So let's look at this first paragraph of your family. Let's see. Why don't you read that for me and see what you think? If there's anywhere that maybe you could provide more details, okay?
Family goes on a big hike in the Sahara Desert. They got lost in the desert and have no food or water. The family has 7 people total. The mom and dad, Summer, Jim, Carson, Maya, and Lily.
So, what do you think?
I definitely think you could probably add more details about their hike in the desert.
I agree with that.
You could probably put more detail on the food and water, and like how they have no food or water.
Okay. Can I tell you one more thing that came to my mind too? I agree with both of those. And I was wondering about this morning, since you have identified the people in the family, you could start developing relationships of, how are the people feeling? What are they thinking? What are the kids saying to the parents? What are the parents responding with? And start giving them personality and maybe some dialogue. What do you think about that route? And that will take some time. I recognize that'll be some work. And so we've identified kind of the order of things, but maybe moving forward for this week, I would suggest just fleshing this out with some detail and starting to say, okay, well, we know there's Mom, Dad, Summer, Jim, Carson, Maya, and Lily, but the reader wants to know, okay, well, how do they feel about their situation, right? Does that make sense? What do you think about that? Do you have any ideas that come to mind?
Well, over here, I said that they ran into a scorpion, which bit the youngest, which would be Lily. So then she's like really scared and stuff.
Okay.
So like that was an idea already that I kind of had.
Perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. So I think that's a good goal for this week. Maybe just take a page and write about this paragraph, and then we'll kind of see from there. I did bring my mentor text again today. I used the same one because it's such a good example of creative writing, and I picked a couple things because I didn't know where we would go with our conference, but this story here is called Crossing, and it's about 2 siblings. And so I wanted to just kind of read to you of how there's this relationship shown between these 2 siblings. It starts out with, it's a brother and a sister. The brother is younger, I believe. Now I've got to remember. Anyways, every Monday when they're walking to school, they race each other, only on Mondays. And they always stop at the crosswalk sign to cross the street to go to their school. And his sister always says, so here we go. Every Monday for years, when she crossed the finish line, so this is the brother talking about the sister. When she crossed the finish line marked by one of those yellow and black school crossing signs, a fraction of a second before him, she chanted the exact same thing. Girls always win, she'd say. Girls always win. The crossing sign at the finish line seemed to agree with her. So now, as we move down here, Owen is the little boy's name. It says, but lately things had been changing. He'd been gaining on Hannah, losing to her by less and less each week. He'd been getting faster and was inching his way to a win. His time was coming. He could feel it. I can do it today, Owen thought, as he and Hannah towed the line and started their countdown. 3. Owen narrowed his eyes. 2. He felt a kind of electricity in his arms and legs. 1. He took in a breath and held it. Go. He burst off the sidewalk crack perfectly, getting a quicker start than Hannah. He pumped his legs, striding on his toes, trying to run light like Mom had taught them. Already he was half a step ahead. Electricity seemed to crackle in the air around him. He was going to do it. But midway up the hill, he saw Hannah out of the corner of his eye. He heard her pounding feet. She was inching closer. If only he could hold on. He focused on the finish line, the boy and the girl in the yellow diamond-shaped sign. Something about those two children pulled at Owen's eyes for just a second. The sign felt different, wrong even. But Owen pushed the distraction aside and told himself to go faster, faster. He ends up losing that race. But can you see how this writer developed kind of the back and forth between the siblings? You know, he's comparing himself to his sister, and you can kind of see his thought process of, I want to beat her. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily have to create a competition between the people in this family, but you can show kind of how they relate to each other and the relationships they have with each other. So I'm excited to see what you come up with. Okay, you have a good week.